if you get what you want, well, then you feel good. But not only do you feel good, but the frame itself is validated. And if you don't get what you want, well, then not only do you not get what you want, but the frame itself starts to come apart at the seams. And the question in part is, how far should the frame come apart? How deeply should you unlearn something when you make a mistake? God, it's a very, very, very hard problem. And I'll show you a partial solution to it. This very useful thing, and this is a Piagetian idea too. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to go to this for a minute. So I'm going to decompose something for you, and this is partly to give you an introduction to the way behaviorists think, but it's also to help unpack how the Piagetian notions work. And so from a Piagetian perspective, high order abstractions are actually made of what's common among actions and perceptions. So, and those things are unified in some sense. So an abstraction isn't what's common across sets of objects. It's more like what's common across sets of perceptions and actions. And so it's a hard thing to understand, but this will help you understand. Okay, so let's say you want to be a good person. It's kind of abstraction, all right? And then you think, well, what does it mean to be a good person? It's a box. It's an empty box. No, it's a box, and it says good person on the outside, but it's full of things. It might even be full of transforming things. So, but you know what it means. You say good person, you kind of know and you kind of know. But, you know, if we started talking about details, we might start to argue. But it's like pornography. You know it when you see it. Okay, so what does it mean to be a good person? Well, we could decompose it. We could say, well, if you're, one way of being a good person is to be a good parent. And you'd basically say that being a good parent is a subset of being a good person, right? Because person is bigger than parent. And maybe it would be to be a good employee and to be a good sister and to be a good, you know, to be a good partner, sort of on the same level of abstraction. So you decompose good person into your major functional roles, let's say, and you're good at all of them, whatever that means. Well, let's say if you're a good parent, well, you have to have a good job, because otherwise you starve and so do your children. So at least you have to financially provide in some manner. That's a subset of being a good parent. It's not the only subset. And then to be a good parent, you also have to take care of your family. And so you could decompose that into play with baby or complete meal. You might say, well, if you can take care of your family, you can either order a meal or you can cook one. It's like, good for you. And so then you're cooking a meal and you think, well, what do you decompose that into? Well, now you're starting to get to the micro level, say, because let's say you're making broccoli. And so you take the broccoli out of the fridge and you put it on the cutting board. That's actually action. That's not abstraction. It's actually something you're doing with your body. So the abstraction grounds itself out in micro activity, actual action. That's the connection between the mind and the body. And so you're cutting broccoli, right? But that's not abstraction. And so if you take apart these higher order moral abstractions, what happens is you decompose them into action perception sequences, and they're embodied. Now, Piaget's basic claim is you build the damn abstractions from the bottom up. That's the fundamental Piagetian claim. It's so the kid comes into the world with some reflexes and starts building a body of embodied knowledge out of that in interaction with other people, and then they start playing games and that abstracts, but they move from the bottom of the hierarchy, which is actual micro actions, up to the top of the abstraction world. And so this is how you boot yourself up. Little bitty stories, little bitty stories at the bottom, cut broccoli, you know, and then cut corn here, set table, do dishes, complete meal, take care of your family, be a good parent, be a good person. And, you know, one of the propositions that I am offering you in this class is that to be a good person, you're actually not stuck in one of these. To be a good person means that you're the thing that transforms these things continually. And so that's what's at the top of the hierarchy, and that's basically the hero story, which is you're in a state of being, an anomaly occurs, you allow it to demolish you, and then you rebuild. And that's at the highest end of the moral hierarchy, and that's also essentially a Piagetian claim. So let's think about emotional regulation, because this is a really good schema for understanding emotional regulation. How upset should you get, and how do you calculate it? Because if you make a mistake, you wake up in the morning and your side hurts. Okay, it's the first symptom of pancreatic cancer, you're dead in 6 months, 100% chance. Or, you know, you pulled a muscle. Well, which is it? You might say, well, the chances of the pancreatic cancer are low, but they're not zero. And like infinite times any proportion is a very large number. So you might be thinking, why don't you just have a screaming fit anytime ever any little thing happens to you? Which is exactly what happens, by the way, if you're 2 years old, right? That is what you do. So, and it's because you don't know, like things fell apart. What does that mean? Could be anything. Well, that's no good. Well, so let's say you're arguing with your partner, you know, and they, I don't know, they make a lousy meal or maybe no meals and you're kind of sick of it, you know. And so you say, you're a bad person. And what's the evidence? Not only are you a bad person, but you've always been a bad person, and the probability that you're going to improve in the future looks to me to be 0. It's like, what's the person supposed to do? Punch you, right? Really, because there's no room in there for any discussion. You're done. It's like, you're horrible, and you don't change. And you've always been horrible, and you've never changed. And, you know, inferring from that into the future, you're going to stay horrible and you're not going to change. Well, any argument can go there immediately. It's a really bad idea, and it happens all the time, and this is why people can't have a civil discussion. You know, they can't say, here's an example. So you've got your 4-year-old, you want them to clean up their room. And so it's full of toys, let's say they're 3.5. You look at it, you say, look, you know, clean this up. Clean up your room. So you shut the door and you go away and you magically hope that when you come back the room will be clean. But of course, the child has no idea, in all likelihood, at that age, or maybe it's 2.5, something like that. They don't know what clean up a room means. That's like way up here, man. It's like you told your child, there's mess everywhere, be a good person, you know, and then you come back in half an hour and they're no better a person than they were, and you get upset. It's like you can't do that. You have to say, you see that teddy bear? And you know that that kid knows how to see a teddy bear. And they know how to pick it up because you've watched them see a teddy bear and pick it up. And you know that the child knows the name of the teddy bear. It's teddy bear. And so you point to the teddy bear and you say, do you see that teddy bear? And they go, yes. And you say, that's good, pat, pat. And they get a little kick of dopamine. So that's a happy day for the kid. And then they smile at you. So you feel pretty good about that too. And then you say, you think you could pick up that teddy bear? And they say, yeah. And so they go over there. Not every kid, by the way, but they go over there and they pick up the teddy bear, and it's like, it's a good day for both of you. And then you say, you see that little space on the shelf? Because you know they know what a shelf is, and you know they know what a space is. And you say, take that teddy bear and put it in the shelf. And they go over there and they put it in the shelf, and then they look at you and you're smiling. And so the probability that they'll do that again is now increased, because watching you smile produces a dopaminergic kick, and you've just strengthened those circuits. So I would highly recommend that you do that with your children and with your partners, right? You watch them like a sneaky person, and every time they do something that you actually want them to do, you notice and you give them a little pat on the head. Yeah, and then they like you. That's cool. But if you don't want them to like you because you hate them, then you won't do that. And you think, well, I don't hate them. It's like, oh yes, you do. You just think about the last month, man. There's been 20 times you absolutely hated them. And maybe that's the predominant emotion. And that's not so good over time. So when they do something good, if you really want to screw things up, watch like a hawk and wait till they do something good and then punish them. That's really fun, that is. That really messes with them. And people do that all the time. So if you really want to muck things up, you can even do it more subtly. You can wait till they do something good, especially if they've never done it before and they're just kind of tentatively trying it, and then you can ignore them. That's a really good one. That's even better than punishing them, because at least when you punish them, you're paying attention. If you ignore them, it's like, that's just perfect. Also takes hardly any effort on your part, so that's an additional plus. So anyways, so if you're having a discussion with someone, it's like what you're doing with this kid, you know. It's like you say, maybe you're negotiating about meals. You don't start with you're a bad person. That's way the hell up here, you know. You blow the whole person's schema right out from underneath them, and you might as well get divorced, which is what will happen if you keep doing that. Soon you'll roll your eyes at each other. That means you're getting divorced, by the way. So if you ever watch it, it does, I'm serious. There's good empirical data on that. Once you're at the eye-rolling stage, there's no going back. So you should intervene way before that. It's discussed, that eye roll. Once you've hit disease-carrying rodent status in your mate's eyes, there's no coming back. So anyways, so what you do if you want to have a conversation with someone that's a corrective conversation is you sort of take a Piagetian attitude. And the attitude is, go to the highest level of resolution that you can manage. So let's say, and that's what you're doing with the kid. It's like, clean up your room, be a good person. It's like, no, they don't know anything about that, but they do know how to pick up a teddy bear. And then maybe you think cleaning up your room is 100 things like that. And so you have to teach the child each one of those 100 things. And then they learn, this is the scheme. They learn what's the same across all of those different actions. That's clean, right? Pick up the teddy bear, put away the Legos, make your bed. What? Those have nothing in common, really. Like the motor output's completely different. But they fall under the heading of clean. But unless you fill the heading of clean with all the subordinate categories of the action perception sequences that make up clean, kid can't do it. And so partly what you're doing by attending to your child constantly is noticing where they are in the construction of this hierarchy. And they start way down here, right? And so that's why you play peekaboo, for example. It's like they can do that. And you can, you interact with them because you can watch, you do a little something, and if they respond, you got some sense that you're at the same level. And kids in playgrounds do that with each other right away. So if you see 2 3-year-olds together, say they're fairly sophisticated for 3-year-olds, what they'll do is they'll start playing a little primitive game with each other, like a dog. You know what a dog does when it wants to play? It kind of goes like that. And that's what kids do, and that's what adults do too. It's a play invitation. It's like, I'm ready, but you're smiling. It's not like I'm ready. And so you can tell the difference between a play, fight, and play, and kids can too. So it's an invitation to play. And so if you're interacting with your little kid, they got that play circuit. Man, that thing's in there like when they're from birth, I think, because you can play with a kid right from birth, at least something like peekaboo. And so you're on the same wavelength fundamentally. And then you interact with them and you see if they're following what you're doing. It's what I'm doing when I'm lecturing, more or less. I'm watching you guys and seeing if we're more or less in the same shared space. And we want the space to be expanding. Because if it's just staying the same, well, you might as well play whatever you play on your computer. It has to be expanding at the same time. That's optimal. And so when you're playing with your kid, you put them on that developmental edge where they're undoing and then rebuilding their little skills. You can do that. Like, I had this memory from when I was a little kid a while back. And I remembered I used to go over to these people's house with my father and my mom. And it was way up in northern Alberta. And these people were Russian immigrants, children of Russian immigrants. And they had a farmhouse way out in the country, way out, by the way, where the railroad actually ended. If you walked north from there, you'd walk until you hit like southern Europe without running into another person. It was way the hell out in the middle of nowhere. And anyways, they had a nice house, like a warm house. They had 3 kids and they were way older than me, but it was a real fun, comfortable place to go. And I used to sit in the living room with my father and his friend, whose name was Nick. And Nick was a really playful guy. I really liked him. He was like my surrogate grandfather. And I don't think I was more than about 3. I'd sit there and I'd try to hit his foot with my fist. And he would be talking to my dad, And my dad would say, Jordan, don't bother Nick. And Nick would say, well, he's not really bothering me. And because Dad was checking it out to see if I was an annoying twerp or if I was a fun kid, because it's a fine line. And so I'd try to hit his foot and he would move it. And I had this memory a while back and I thought, wow, that was a good memory. And I thought, what is going on there exactly? And I realized, well, he was sharpening me up. It's like I was aiming at something. You're aiming at something. You're pointing your eyes at it. You're pointing your whole damn soul at it. You're aiming at something. And you're trying to get your behaviors and your conceptions in line and organized so that you can attain that aim. That's what people do. We throw rocks at things. We fire arrows at things. We shoot guns at things. We aim at things. Our whole body is that platform for aiming. And I was trying to aim at his feet, and he'd move his feet, but he'd let me hit it now and then. And so let's say you're a rat, okay? Because, like I said, a rat's a good model for a person. Let's say you're a little rat, a juvenile male, and you want to play, because you want to play. And you'll work to play, and that's how we know you want to play if we're experimental psychologists, because you'll button push like mad to get access to an arena where you can wrestle with another little rat. And so rats wrestle just like human beings, and they even pin each other just like human beings, and they love that. And so if you put little rat A in with little rat B, and little rat B is 10% bigger, little rat B can stomp the hell out of little rat A all the time. So they go out there and they have a little dominance competition, and little rat B is going to win because he's bigger. So now he's dominant rat. So then they play and they wrestle, and little rat A loses. And then next time, they both know that little rat A is the inviter because he's subordinate. So he's the one that has to go up to the big rat and go, you ready? And the big rat then will wrestle. However, if you repeatedly pair them, and the big rat doesn't let the little rat win, at least 30% of the time, the little rat won't invite him to play anymore. And that was Icke who figured that out. And that is mind-boggling. Because it tells you, like, there's an ethical basis for play that's so deep that the damn rats, and they're rats, right? Not known for their sense of fair play. The big rat has to let the little rat win 30% of the time, or the little rat will not play anymore. And even rats know that. It's so profound, that discovery. Like, Panksepp discovered the play circuit in mammals. That's a big deal. That's like discovering a whole continent. Like, that's a big deal. He should have got a Nobel Prize for that. And to see that that's built in, that sense of fair play, that's mind-boggling, you know, because that's evidence for the biological instantiation of a complex morality. Fair play. Even if you can win, you shouldn't all the time. Well, so when I'm trying to hit Nick's feet with my hand, like, I'm really paying attention and he's moving it pretty well, but now and then I get to nail it and I'm feeling pretty good about that, you know. And he makes it a little bit more difficult all the time so that my aim gets better and better, and I'm building up my motor coordination, I'm building up my social skills because I don't hit too hard, and I don't cry when I miss, because that just makes you annoying to play with, right? So I'm learning really complicated things about how to go about finessing my aim, and that's what you're doing with your kids. And what are they aiming at? Well, they aim higher and higher. So when my son was about 2.5, we had him start setting the table. You don't say, you know, you want to take grandma's fine china and go set the table? It's like, no, you don't do that. You say, you know what a fork looks like? He goes, yeah. See, do you know what the forks are? Well, that doesn't work because the drawer's way up here, right? So you have to hand him a fork. You say, look, take this fork and go put it on the table. And he's like this high, you know, so he goes over to the table and he puts the fork up here. Can't even see what he's doing. He puts the fork up there, and then, you know, he's reasonably happy with that. And you give him a pat, and then you go and give him a really sharp knife. No, you don't do that. You don't do that. You give him a spoon and you say, well, go put the spoon beside the fork. And you don't say, look, you stupid kid, you got to leave enough space between the fork and the spoon so the plate can fit there. Don't you know anything? You're stupid. It's like, well, that's right up here, right? You're a bad kid. No, that's bad. You don't do that. You go down here and you say, well, good micro routine adaptation there, chum. Let's try it again. You know, and you build that up, and and you can't extend the kid past his point or her point of exhaustion, because it's got to be a game. And a 2-year-old can probably only do that for, you can watch them, and some are more persistent than others, but 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you're pushing your luck. You can take a 2-year-old to a restaurant for about 40 minutes and expect them to sit and behave. But after that, you know, the will exhausts them. All right, well, anyways, that's Piaget in his nascent form fundamentally. And so if you remember that diagram and you think about how that would be built from the bottom up, and how there would be a stage transition every